Hello. This week I happened to be at Cordoba Airport, not the one in Spain, but the one in Argentina. And this week we're looking at number 3 in the series on the book of Daniel. And this one's entitled From Mystery to Revelation. Of course, it's about Daniel 2, that chapter much beloved by evangelists. And if you've been part of our faith community for any time, you'll have heard presentations on this chapter. So we don't need to go through it, the head of gold and chest of silver and so on. You can probably recite that. So as we think of this, what I really would like to concentrate on is, what does this tell us about the nature and the character of God? Because to me, that's the more important thing as we look through. Is it just about telling the future so that we could believe here in the 21st century? Or is God having a specific purpose in mind, particularly for Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians and all those people around? Because this idea of interpreting a dream was very common in ancient times, and that's what a lot of the soothsayers, fortune tellers, magicians, call them what you will, spent time on trying to explain what the dream meant. And even today we have people who want to try and explain what your dreams mean. Sometimes there may be some direct connections. Other times they're completely off the wall and maybe there isn't any interpretation you could give. But in this case, it's a very special interpretation that's required, isn't it? When these, let's call them astrologers, found out that the king had had a dream, they rubbed their hands and said, okay, great, now we can give him a good interpretation and he'll be happy with us. What they didn't realize when they came in for their audience with the king was that he didn't know what the dream was. He just knew that he'd had a very important dream. It needed to be interpreted, but he couldn't remember it. He couldn't recall all the details. He just knew it was something very, very significant and important. And they said, well, tell us the dream. And he says, I can't tell you the dream. You have to tell it to me and explain it to me. And they said, well, that's never been done before. This is not the way the system works. You're asking for impossibilities. And Nebuchadnezzar probably has already had some dealings with them and probably has some suspicion that they're just making stuff up or giving him an interpretation that kind of seems to fit in some way or another. But here's the real test, isn't it? As they say, well, just tell us what it was and we'll explain it. He says, no, I can't tell you. You just tell me what I dreamt. And they're saying, no, that's not something that we can do. This isn't the way things work. And he says, see, I know you're all frauds. Off with your heads. And this, of course, applies to Daniel and his friends who've also been brought into this group of wise men. And when they find out that things are going this way, of course, they're alarmed, not just for their own safety, but for everybody else too. And they do something which I think is very significant. The first thing they do is to pray about it. They pray about it. And when they prayed, Daniel is given the assurance that God is going to be with him. And he goes before the king. And the king asks, well, do you know? And of course, Daniel says, no, I don't, but God in heaven does. And he gives the interpretation and explains what it really means. Because God is interested not in simply giving you stuff about the future, foretelling what is to come, but to make an impression so that especially King Nebuchadnezzar could come to him and discover the true God and not Marduk or Bel or one of these other Babylonian gods, no God at all, but come to know him personally as his true friend, his savior, the one who really is the high king of heaven. And eventually, of course, Nebuchadnezzar, as we'll see later on, does come to some kind of belief. I wouldn't say it's absolutely complete. It takes some time, as he does with all of us. But God is interested not in just saving his special people, but in saving everyone. What a wonderful message from Daniel chapter 2.